It's Friday night in New York. A group of friends is planning dinner. Someone suggests a trendy rooftop restaurant. Everyone starts checking the menu silently. You know that moment when you're calculating tax, tip, Uber, and the "I shouldn't be spending this" guilt in your head? Now picture one person replying in the group chat. "Hey, that place looks amazing, but I'm on a savings goal right now. Can we do something cheaper?" No excuse. No fake "I'm busy." No "I'm tired." No pretending. Just honest. That right there is something called loud budgeting. And believe it or not, it might be one of the smartest financial trends Gen Z has started. But is Gen Z actually doing it right? Or is this just another TikTok trend that sounds good but falls apart in real life? Today, we're breaking it down. The psychology, the money math, the social pressure, the real data, the risks, the benefits, and by the end of this video, you'll know whether loud budgeting is something you should actually use in your own life. And trust me, if you live in the US right now, with inflation, rent prices, student loans, and credit card interest rates where they are, this conversation matters more than ever. Let's rewind for a second. For decades in America, money was quiet, almost secretive. People didn't talk about debt. They didn't talk about salaries. They didn't say, "I can't afford that." Instead, they said, "I'll figure it out. I'll put it on the card. It's fine." Credit cards made it easy. Buy now, worry later. But later has arrived for a lot of people. As of recent years, U.S. credit card debt has crossed over $1 trillion. Average credit card interest rates have climbed above 20%. Student loan balances remain massive. Rent in major cities has surged. Groceries cost more than they did just a few years ago. At the same time, Gen Z, people roughly born between 1997 and 2012, entered adulthood during chaos. They saw a global pandemic, layoffs, inflation spikes, tech industry instability, student loan payment pauses, and restarts. So instead of pretending money doesn't matter, they started saying something radical. It does matter, and I'm going to talk about it. That's loud budgeting. The term exploded on TikTok when creators started openly saying things like, "I'm not broke, I just don't want to spend money on that. I'm choosing my savings goal over brunch. I'm prioritizing my emergency fund." It's not about being cheap. It's not about never having fun. It's about replacing silent financial shame with visible financial boundaries. And here's what makes it powerful. It shifts the social norm. Because think about how much spending in America is social. Birthdays, weddings, bachelor trips, concerts, group vacations, holiday gifts, office lunches, happy hours. A huge portion of discretionary spending isn't about need, it's about not wanting to feel left out. Economists call this social signaling. Psychologists call it conformity pressure. Regular people call it FOMO. Gen Z is basically saying we're done spending money just to keep up. And that's where it gets interesting, because historically, Americans have been wired to equate spending with success. Nice car, luxurious apartment, designer brands, expensive vacations. Millennials grew up during the rise of Instagram, where curated lifestyles became public competition. Gen Z grew up watching that and also watching millennials struggle with debt. So their response, less flexing, more transparency. Now let's talk about why loud budgeting is resonating so strongly in the U.S. First, housing. The median home price in America has risen dramatically over the past decade. Mortgage rates climbed sharply after historic lows. Rent has increased in many cities. For a lot of young adults, homeownership feels distant. When the biggest wealth-building asset feels out of reach, people become more protective of every dollar. Second, student loans. Even though repayment pauses gave temporary relief, millions of borrowers still carry significant balances. Monthly payments restarting forced budgeting conversations back into reality. Third, credit card interest. With rates hovering over 20% for many users, carrying a balance is expensive. Every dinner charged to a card and unpaid becomes future financial stress. Gen Z sees this math clearly, so loud budgeting becomes a defense mechanism. But here's the real question. Is it actually effective long-term, or is it just performative honesty? Let's break down the benefits first. Number 1, it removes shame. For years, people hid financial struggles. That silence created isolation. When someone says, "I can't afford that right now," it normalizes financial boundaries. Research in behavioral finance shows that transparency reduces impulsive decisions driven by social pressure. When you state your goal publicly, like saving for a house or paying off debt, you're more likely to stick to it. Number 2, it builds intentional spending. Loud budgeting isn't about never spending, it's about aligning spending with values. Maybe you skip expensive brunch but still pay for a gym membership. Maybe you avoid bar hopping but invest in travel. Maybe you say no to luxury brands but yes to a business course. The difference is intention. Number 3, it challenges lifestyle inflation. As income rises, spending tends to rise too. That's called lifestyle creep. Loud budgeting interrupts that pattern by making saving socially acceptable instead of embarrassing. Now let's look at the criticisms, because not everyone thinks this is healthy. Some critics argue loud budgeting can turn into financial anxiety culture. Constantly talking about money constraints might reinforce scarcity mindset. Others say it risks becoming performative, people announcing frugality online for validation while still spending in private. And there's another concern. Is Gen Z underspending to the point of missing life experiences? There's a difference between setting boundaries and isolating yourself. If you decline every social event, relationships suffer. If you obsess over every dollar, stress increases. If you treat every expense as a threat, life shrinks. So the key question isn't whether loud budgeting is good or bad, it's whether it's balanced. Let's compare two scenarios. Scenario 1. You avoid all social spending. You save aggressively. You feel proud financially, but disconnected socially. Scenario 2. You spend recklessly to maintain appearances. You feel socially included, but financially stressed. Neither is sustainable. The ideal space is in between. Say this instead. I'm saving for something important, but I'd love to join. Can we choose something within this budget? That keeps relationships intact while honoring your goals. Now let's zoom out and talk about cultural shift. Gen Z isn't just budgeting loudly, they're also discussing salaries publicly, sharing debt payoff journeys, talking about investing basics, exposing credit card traps, questioning hustle culture. That's different from previous generations, which often treated money as private. And transparency changes power dynamics. When employees talk about pay, wage gaps shrink. When people share debt experiences, stigma decreases. When budgeting becomes normal, overspending becomes less glamorous. In a high-cost economy, that matters. But here's the twist. Loud budgeting only works if it's paired with financial literacy. Saying, "I can't afford it" is step 1. Understanding why and what to do next is step 2. Are you building an emergency fund? Are you paying high-interest debt first? Are you investing early for compound growth? Are you tracking spending categories? Because if loud budgeting is just reactive, constantly declining, without a long-term plan, it doesn't build wealth, it only slows spending. The most financially successful people don't just avoid expenses, they allocate strategically. Let's talk numbers for a second. If you invest $300 per month starting at age 22, earning an average 7% annual return, by age 60, you could accumulate hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially over $700,000, depending on consistency and returns. That's the power of early discipline. Skipping one $80 dinner might not change your life, but building the habit of intentional money decisions might. Now I want to address something important for the U.S. audience watching this. America runs heavily on consumer spending. Nearly 70% of U.S. GDP is driven by consumer spending. The economy is literally powered by people buying things. So culturally, we are encouraged to spend. Sales, buy now, pay later, limited drops, Black Friday, credit rewards. Resisting that isn't easy. So loud budgeting is almost rebellious in a consumer-driven culture. But rebellion alone isn't